Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. So I know I haven't put out a video in a while. Life is crazy. But yes, baby girl's healthy and beautiful. Yeah, I'm finally getting a little fishing in lately. And that's been fun. Got me thinking about this whole summer transition and what I do to get some extra big bites in the summer. So I'll kind of be bouncing around a bit on this video, but overall it's just a summer video, my thoughts, and on my way to a lake, maybe I'll get some fun footage. I might slip in some footage from my last couple trips. It has been interesting, and every year I learn a lot, but my fundamentals haven't changed for summertime, and I'll get into that a little bit right now, so stay tuned. Alright guys, so even though my fishing will mostly be smallmouth today, I did want to talk about largemouth because it's interesting how this works. You know, I know a lot of guys watching my channel are beginners, but some of this will be for the guys that have some experience. So I think one of my main things that I've learned this year was how these largemouth behave. Now, particularly these bigger largemouth. On many lakes, you have a mix of a little offshore and then a lot of shallow fishing. And you can find big ones, lots of little ones in the shallows and weed lines. But I've noticed the biggest fish in the lakes that I fish go a little deeper and suspend on wood, any cover that's transitioning into weed lines or primary spots. The biggest fish often feed on little trout, and that's no secret. It's no secret at all, but finally putting it together and targeting these fish has been probably the highlight for me for the last couple summers. And it also has surprised me how deep these largemouth are willing to go, particularly in eastern Washington. So yeah, some key info on that is finding this deeper cover that relates to either closer to drop-offs, not far offshore, not the middle of the lake suspended oftentimes, but as long as it's relatively close to weed lines, docks, things like that, these fish will push deeper. And I would say up to, you can find them in 30 feet of water, but they're often suspended. They're not sitting on the bottom in that depth. Although I have seen in a few occasions, especially eastern Washington, these largemouth will sit on the bottom as well, especially in the heat of the summer. And my favorite baits to throw for those is Huddleston. Can't go wrong with that. Any big swim bait has some drawing power, and these bigger fish let their guard down a little bit when they see big baits. So you can sometimes get a bite on that when nothing else is working. So on slow days, I would definitely try out some bigger baits. My next favorite big bait, if not my favorite, is a bigger glide bait, 6-inch or bigger. And that will draw these bigger bites, especially when they're suspended on vertical cover offshore. So I've made past videos on that, and you can always go back. I've done some detailed videos kind of showing, I might link up in the corner here, but showing how they suspend on offshore cover and what type of cover to throw big baits at. So that's probably my number one favorite way to fish. Even though I don't get many bites doing this, when I do get bites, they can be rather big. And that's oftentimes all I'm really looking for, to be perfectly honest. Smallmouth is kind of a similar story, although they will feed more on perch and kokanee. So if you're in a perch and kokanee lake, you might find these fish offshore, and when they're staging a certain way, it's kind of a hint that they're looking for some some roaming balls of bait going by some cover or some kokanee. And it's also a fun way to catch them. I love throwing a glide bait even at smallmouth. I find that to be a lot of fun. There's nothing like dragging a big old smallmouth in with a glide bait. Although it's a little tricky to keep them hooked sometimes, and a lot of times they just slap it. But at least that tells you where they're at, which is a good tip to bring up. Even if you don't consistently use a glide bait, it is a fantastic search bait, especially for big fish. And I'll tell you why. You can, glide baits oftentimes fish slowly, but you don't have to fish it slow. Just do a regular retrieve, and you don't even really need to pause much if you're just trying to cover ground. And you will find either the big ones will come up and slap it, kind of hit it, but don't quite get hooked. Anytime you even get even a small slap, note that. Mark it on your electronics if you got it. Just remember those spots, because these fish don't move much. They'll often sit in these same areas, and you can go back and even throw something different. And a lot of times they will follow a glide to the boat, and that'll obviously clear as day. If you see a big one following your glide to the bait, or a glide to the boat, then you know that wherever you cast it, somewhere along that retrieve is a spot where they're setting up. And that's kind of my fish finder, aside from my actual fish finder. Throwing that around is, late spring, early summer, and it'll expose some of these bigger fish to you. And that's a great tip for those who don't either know quite yet how to use your electronics, or don't have electronics at all. It's a fantastic, if you're on little lakes, even with a kayak, it's a great way to figure out what areas are holding the bigger fish. So it's a great technique to find big fish. So as far as smallmouth go, I would say smallmouth and largemouth, if you're not able to get the big baits to work, I kind of go to the other end of the spectrum. And I know I mentioned this in past videos, but I'll do either really big baits or small finesse baits. And I don't throw a lot in between. When I say that, I'd say over half the time I'm fishing each summer day is using either oversized baits or small finesse baits. And it's just simply because of the consistency. Drop shot is not my favorite way to fish, but it's certainly effective. And even for largemouth, these offshore largemouth are totally down with the drop shot. I've caught a number of big ones already this summer using drop shot. And this year, more than last year, I thought that was more of a fall idea, because I found a fall trick, a fall bait that I like for catching big largemouth. Well, turns out continuing to use that this summer, and I'm getting really good success. I've caught lots of 4-pounders off of deeper weed lines, just tossing a drop shot in there, either with a worm or a flatworm, or even a little paddle tail. You can even throw kites, just throw a Kitech on there. And just taking your time. If you're in the area, for example, if you find a couple chasers on your glide bait, mark that area, go back through with a drop shot, and really pick it apart, let it drop down there, do a little shaking, and you know, you can shake it fairly aggressively, but don't cover much ground, and let these fish get a chance to look at it. And sometimes you'll shake it for a little bit before they bite it, and it's not to me, it's not a fun way to catch them, but shoot, when they bite it and you're fighting them on a little rod with light line, you know, it's exhilarating trying to get these bigger ones to the boat, just using you know, spinning rod and reel, and it's a fun way to catch them, you know, once you start hooking them, of course. Otherwise, it's kind of boring. I get it. But, you know, Nico rig, there's a couple other rigs, and other finesse baits are a great way to get these bigger fish to bite when it's tough. Another great way to target these fish that are suspended is throwing a Senko, you know, a weightless Senko, and kind of just letting it drop down to their level. I know it's slow and a little tedious, but it does work a lot relative to other ideas. You know, obviously swimming just a Kitech on a jig head is great, but it's not impervious to snags by all means. But it does definitely work. So what I did is I got a weedless jig head that's a little heavier, so I can reel it in a little faster and buzz it by these pieces of cover without worrying too much about getting snagged. They're not that expensive, and I think that's going to be a good idea. I've only caught one doing that so far, but I'm fairly confident that that's going to be a good technique to get them. And if they're a little too deep, let's say they're suspended, you know, 10 plus feet down, you could just do a little weighted wacky, and you could do a weedless if you're throwing real tight to cover and you're worrying about getting snagged up. But I don't really use weedless anyway. I find it's not that beneficial, but yeah, as long as you place your cast in the right spot and you keep track of the wind direction and don't let it just blow into some wood, it's definitely a good way to get these suspended fish to bite. Definitely want to add those in the mix. You know, even though I prefer to use other things, that's some good ways to get them to bite. A little extra info on this video and make this a little bit more informative rather than just you know, showing off my catches and having fun on the water. So and then another note, so why I'm fishing today, I'm finally going to get around to doing another tournament, so that should be fun. So I'm putting in a little practice, so it's not going to be all that eventful. I try not to catch all the fish I plan to catch during the tournament, but lots of scanning and that sort of thing. But yeah, I'm excited for that. If all goes well, I get to do another couple tournaments to finish out the summer and early fall. So fingers crossed. I'm definitely not doing any Angler of the Year stuff. I've already missed some tournaments, but yeah, it should be fun nonetheless. I always love, you know, I call it fishing with a purpose. I like fishing with a purpose sometimes. When I'm not doing that, I'm just focused on trying to catch some big fish. So should be fun, so stay tuned for that. Maybe I'll get to a video. It's not the most exciting lake, and it's not a lake I think I can win at, but yeah, might be fun regardless. So stay tuned for that as well.